Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Shweta. It's great to be back again.
Absolutely amazing to be back again. So just to review what we did last time in the last video is we looked at the importance of intention. Video one was all about attention and decluttering our space, our workspace. So giving attention very focusedly to one thing. Video two was all about intention, having a purpose for what we want to remember, but also the power of systems to create systems in our mind. So we're kind of decluttering our mind almost and creating a very organized way of being so that our memory has slots information can go into easily for easy recall. So we also talked about the PEG system, and we told the viewers about the PEG system and the benefits of the PEG system. And I know that you have actually spoken to someone about the PEG system and got them to do the activity. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I will. But before I do, just to say, if anybody doesn't know what Shweta was talking about then, please go back and look at our sessions 1 and 2 and all become clear, because there's lots of really useful tips and ideas in there. And we are building on this because improving memory is not just one thing. It's a sort of mix and match of all sorts of different aspects. But yeah, I was talking to somebody who was finding that when they go to shops to get their shopping, they invariably end up buying loads of stuff and missing the one key thing actually that they're meant to be buying. So they tried it out just using a very simple PEG system, not going all the way up to maybe 5 or 10 items, which you can do, but just using 3. And they would use that for the key items which they needed for that night's dinner. And yeah, and it made a great difference. They ended up with what they needed. So it's definitely worth giving it a go.
Yes, absolutely, definitely worth it. Oh, that's so great that they've had a good experience with it.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking as well in today's video. We want to move on to looking at reducing memory overload, which is something we did mention in the last video as well. So should we go deeper into that?
Yeah, that's a really good topic. It's a very important topic actually, because memory overload is when your brain's capacity to hold information just becomes saturated. It's a sort of usually a short-term information problem. And when that happens, your ability to problem solve is severely affected. Yeah, and that I think everybody's experienced in some way. It's very often related to stress. Stress certainly impacts on it, and it can result in something as significant as just having a total memory wipeout. You occasionally hear people talking about being in exams and they've studied, or even just doing their spellings tests, and the next day they can't remember anything. And that's the stress pushing that out, but it can also just be too much information in that hasn't been categorized properly. Do you ever experience this?
I do. I was actually thinking about when you said that it's problem solving, and actually, we think of problem solving as being this kind of huge thing that we need to think about and focus on and work through. But actually, it can be like really minor problems that we have to work through in life that can get affected by memory overload too. So, as an example, me just planning a week's meals, I'm not good at that. That's usually something that my husband does because I just don't like it. It really overwhelms me to have to think about each meal and then all the different ingredients needed for each meal and then create a grocery list from that. And I find it so overwhelming. My mind shuts down. I don't go into complete memory wipeout, like I know some students do with exams and things, but I just get to a point where my emotions are so heightened. All I want to do is just run away from it. It's like, I can't do this, and I have this emotional surge, usually related to it.
Yeah,
So
that is interesting, isn't it? I don't find it happens as extreme for me, but then I think very differently to you, because I am somebody who writes mental lists. But if I am overwhelmed, if I've got too much going on in my life, it's rather than just being one event, but if there's not a lot happening, that I start to feel that I'm being sort of attacked on all sides. And then I notice that my ability to keep track of things, to remember information, to remember detail is severely affected. But it's almost like the outfit for me is that I become clumsy. It's a physical thing that then happens rather than my memory continues to deteriorate. I just start to find that my minor motor control has reduced. So it's sort of interesting that this can it is very different for everybody, but everybody will be affected by what we are calling memory overload. This sort of too much going on in your head for you to be able to process it effectively.
So what you've just said, actually, I've just taken two really important things from that. Number one is that it is very individual. You know, everybody experiences memory overload in very, very different ways. And number two is that there are two categories we really need to look at. So number one is, you know, what is your trigger? What is the thing that is causing your memory overload? Is it that I have to remember all these facts and figures for my work or for this meeting or for school for exams, you know, or is it I have to plan an event? Like for me, it's always events. Events make me stressed out. I didn't plan my wedding. It was too much for me. I just handed it over to my mum. So things like that, it could be different things. It's always really important individually for you to know what is my trigger. And the second category is what are the symptoms that I am demonstrating that should show me, like, as a, you know, as a really physical thing, oh wow, my memory's overloaded now. So for me, it's an emotional surge when my body just goes, you know, I have an emotional reaction to it. That's when I know, okay, overload, take a deep breath, you know, take a step back. And for you, it
Yeah.
seems more physically, like I get clumsy.
Yeah, I would say that it is also a feeling. I would feel fragmented is how I describe it, because I'm no longer operating as I would like to, and that to me is my is the trigger that I recognize. So the $1 million question then: what do we do if you do recognize your own trigger and you know that you're beginning to be overloaded? What can we do to dissipate it?
There are so many things, so many things. I mean, this is such a big area, huge area. And I know that actually so many people I talk to about memory are interested in this. It's like the solution-based stuff. So we can't go into everything in this video. That's the truth of it. But let's talk about maybe a few things that seem really basic, but actually are so powerful as just initial steps to allow you to not overload to that level.
Yeah,
I guess the first.
just give us your favorite, because I know otherwise you have so many ideas,
Oh yeah.
and we don't have hours and hours and hours. And much as I'd love to know them all, tell us your favorite, and we'll save
Yeah.
the others for another time, which I'll really look forward to.
Yeah. Let's talk about just like my first and foremost always is breathing. Yeah. So I know that actually a lot of people might switch this video off at this point, but I really urge you to just have a listen to this. There is very scientific evidence now to show the benefits of breathing. And it's all about the cerebrospinal fluid that sort of moves around in our body. Gets the movement of that fluid increases when we breathe in very specific ways with a lot of intention and focus on our breath. Breathing is so powerful to just allow you to take a step back, not just a step, it's like a leap back away from this really overpowering situation. And memory overload is one of them. So my favorite breath type is actually the alternate nostril breathing. So you sort of block one nostril, you breathe in through the left nostril, hold for 4 seconds, and then you cover the right nostril with your 2 middle fingers, breathe out for 4 seconds, and then you breathe in again for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds while you're switching over, and then breathe out again for 4. And you just keep doing that over and over. There are loads of YouTube videos out there for this. It is one of the most powerful breathing techniques I have ever felt. Literally, I can feel in my chest area, like there is almost like a balloon deflating. It's like, you know, things are calming in my body. What about you? Do you think that have you ever tried breathing techniques to help yourself in these
Yes,
moments?
I just use a very simple one. I'd love to try what you were doing. I was hoping just now you were going to say let's give it a go so we could all try together.
Oh,
Um, I usually use a very simple one of breathing in for 4 and out for 6. I think it's important that you exhale longer than you inhale, and doing that over a sustained period is, I find, very relaxing. And sometimes if I wake at night, I would use it then as well to just focus on my breathing and help me get back to sleep again. Yeah.
Absolutely. Any breathing technique, I guess, the takeaway from this is any breathing technique is going to support you in the long run. It does. There is scientific evidence now that says it does reduce the reaction of your amygdala, which is your fight or flight response in the brain. So it reduces that impact. So you're not constantly looking for threats in your environment. You can just shut down and just calm yourself and be in the present moment. Breathing is just breathe.
Yeah. So this is actually really important. So if somebody is going into whether it's a meeting that they're anxious about, or an exam, or the spelling test or something, if beforehand they just take a short while and go through whatever breathing exercise works for them, it will have a good effect. It doesn't have to be that you're doing 20 minutes of breathing, does it?
Oh God, no, no. Sometimes even a couple of minutes, is so, so powerful in that very stressful situation. You're feeling memory is getting overloaded. You're feeling completely emotionally out of balance. A couple of minutes of just breathing can bring you back to a moment of stability. And that could be the catalyst for then movement into something much more profound.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think you need a huge amount of time in this.
Even not a couple of minutes. I mean, a couple of minutes would be fantastic. I think that would move you into a really good state where your brain and memory are right back on sort of even keel. But if you don't have that couple of minutes, that doesn't matter either. Just standing somewhere quietly for a moment and inhaling and exhaling a couple of times will get you through the next moment. So, try all sorts of things. Everybody's different, and
Yeah.
but there is almost like a different breathing technique for every situation,
Oh,
and they're all
absolutely.
good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you talk about the sort of that breath where you sort of breathe in through your nose, hold for just a couple of seconds, and then proudly breathe out through your mouth. Like you said, a couple of those is very, very powerful in that moment. So yeah, try anything. Try breathing.
Yeah, yeah. Now, of course, I'm different. That's what's so great about you and I tossing all these ideas around. And if I'm trying to sort out my sense of memory overload, I will start to try to attribute meaning to my thoughts, my memories. So I'm trying to put it all into boxes and file it more efficiently. And that's another way of doing it. That the breathing is going to let your brain do it naturally, because it gives the body a chance to make those connections for itself. Um, and another way is then to make the connections for it. And it can be something really simple. We've got a rather silly one on our garden gate, which is 1984, and then Z, because anybody who needs to access the back garden in order to break into the house in the night to get to bed has had something go significantly wrong in their evening because they've lost their keys and they're just desperate to go to sleep. So that's a sort of joke that we have on our code. And that means that we can all remember it, because it's not just random letters and numbers. Or you can do it in a much bigger way. If you are learning or working, before you read or you discuss anything, you think about the context, think what you already know, and think why it is that you're needing to read or learn this, so that you are making those connections or identifying those connections, so that bit of information can slot into that place. And that will also stop memory load occurring, rather than having to deal with it after it has occurred.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually just very powerfully reducing the chunk, like creating, I guess what you're saying is creating more chunks so that you're not having individual pieces, but you've got chunks.
Well, bigger
That,
chunks. Yes,
bigger chunks. Yeah,
yes. Because
yeah,
it's going somewhere where you've already got some information, so you're adding to it, rather than
yeah,
having all these little bits of random bits of information that all pile up, and
yes, yeah,
your brain doesn't know what to do with them. So
yeah, absolutely.
or it throws them away,
Yes.
which is it, it forces you to forget information that you might otherwise have wanted to remember. Yeah.
Absolutely. I guess another thing to add to this list is just the importance of taking a break.
Yeah.
So you're learning information, you've got all this new stuff going in. We can't, as human beings, sit down and just keep taking in information. It has to be consolidated. It has to be, like you said, chunked and organized, right? So
Yeah.
for that, one of the, like, a really powerful thing I've found is taking a break completely from the work. For me personally, it's movement breaks. So I'm like going for a walk, or I go to the gym, or I'm doing some yoga exercises and stretching. So that movement is like a relaxation time where I'm not taking in new information, but my brain is consolidating information that it has taken in. Like for other people, I don't know that movement would necessarily be what they need. They could just go for a cup of coffee. I know you like to go for a cup of tea or coffee.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's the idea is more that your conscious brain is only a part of what's there, and the subconscious, of course, is huge. And whatever break you take, even though you're no longer thinking about whatever the problem is, the subconscious keeps on processing it. So using exercise as well, I think, is really, really powerful. But actually, yeah, just going and making a cup of tea or doing something else just gives your brain a chance to make those connections and do a little bit of sort of subconscious filing, so that when you come back, there's sort of space and aptitude to carry on taking in more information. But I would agree with you, Shweta. I think that almost the most important thing that you should be taking away, or people should be taking away from this session, is build breaks in to whatever you're doing. And in that break, do whatever works for you. And it is highly likely that a breathing exercise would be a very positive thing to do. But there's other things as well, because we're all individuals. Would you
Yes.
agree that's a good sort of summing
Yes.
up? Or
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. As long as you're not on TikTok or Instagram taking in new information by scrolling, you're actually giving yourself a break. Whatever you do in that time then is just completely up to you. You can move, you can breathe, you can just daydream and zone out. That's quite nice sometimes, to just look away, and just think about random things. That's really, really pleasant. So whatever it means for you to relax in that moment will allow your brain to consolidate information. But I know that we have a very, very exciting session. Our next session is all about forgetting. So the importance of forgetting information for your brain, and the importance of the role of forgetting for memory enhancement, ironically. So we definitely want to look into that next time, don't we?
We do, and that's going to be an interesting session. When we started planning out our thoughts on these, we thought we should mention forgetting, but as we've been going through this session and earlier sessions, we're finding more and more things that we realize we want to tell you about forgetting, because it is so important. So we hope you'll all join us for that one next week. But before then, our challenge to you this week is, to try taking breaks in between your work or studying. Just build them into your daily routine and try out one of the breathing techniques, either one of the ones that we've mentioned today or one that you particularly like, and just note how that impacts how you function and how you feel and how your memory is working, and let us know.